I just want to say first that you can hear I've lost my voice a little bit. So if you find it, please let me know. I was singing perhaps too hard under a chuppah this past Sunday, which is the best reason for a rabbi to get to lose her voice. And then, of course, the hora was just wonderful. So celebrating good things for the Jewish people is a great reason to misplace your voice. But I hope you'll still be able to hear me well. The Torah introduces Noach with such promise. Noach ish tzaddik tamim haya bedorotav. Noah was a righteous man, our Torah tells us, blameless in his generation. And yet, when God tells him the world will be destroyed by a flood, Noah doesn't protest. He doesn't beg for mercy for his neighbors, the way that Avraham will later plead for Sodom, or the way that Moshe will intercede for the Israelites, for Bnei Israel, after the incident of the golden calf. Noah simply builds an ark to save himself, his family, and a pair or 7 of each living creature. The rabbis are left uneasy by this. How can this man be called righteous when he only looked out for himself? Other rabbis try to argue that Noah actually did try to save others. After all, you can't really build an ark of that size in secret. It must have taken decades. It must have been loud. It must have taken up a lot of space. And so surely, people asked Noah what he was doing. And in answering them, perhaps Noah hoped that the people would repent for their bad ways, that they would turn from violence, from corruption, from stealing, and join him in building something redemptive. Maybe that's what it means when the rabbis and when God describes Noah as righteous in his generation. When the world floods, when violence and grief and fear threaten to drown us, we must be willing to build something visible to others, to lead by example, to invite people in. On Thursday evening, I went to see the movie The Road Between Us, a documentary that tells the story of Noam Tibon, a retired Israeli general, who on October 7th received a text from his son Amir that their kibbutz near Oz was under attack, that there were terrorists in Amir's home near his 2 young daughters. Noam and his wife raced south from Tel Aviv, driving straight into danger when most were fleeing from it. They stopped along the way. Imagine that. They stopped along the way to save their children and grandchildren in order to save a young couple who had escaped the Nova Festival and were hiding in the bushes. They were detoured a little bit to evacuate a wounded soldier to a hospital. And eventually, they joined up with a team of elite soldiers as they fought their way through the burning fields and ambushes to reach their children and grandchildren. By the time they arrived, they had rescued countless others, defended the kibbutz, and helped save not only their children and grandchildren, but also neighbors, friends, and strangers caught in the chaos. Their home became a headquarters for these families on that day. It's one of the countless stories from October 7th of people who didn't just save themselves or just their family, but who built an ark in real time, pulling others aboard even as the floodwaters rose. And since that day, I believe that Israelis have continued to build that teva, that lifeboat, for each other, for Am Yisrael, Even when our leadership has faltered, even when the future felt uncertain. Think of the reservists who dropped everything to defend their communities. The volunteers who have spent months, years, cooking meals, housing displaced families, bringing toys and therapy to children still trembling from trauma. The farmers in the north and the south who tend to each other's crops and fields. The families of hostages who created a movement they refused to let their loved ones be forgotten. They built empathy and presence that stretched far beyond political lines. And even as the waters rose, continued rising after October 7th, we kept building. This week, finally, it has felt to me like the waters have perhaps begun to recede. At the very least, it feels like the rain has finally stopped, and we're almost there. In our Torah, when the water begins to fade, Noah sends out a dove, a Yonah, who returns with an olive branch in her beak, a small sign of life, of something new beginning to grow, of possibility. Then God places a keshet, a rainbow, in the sky, as a promise, a reminder that life will continue. With the return of our living hostages and some of our hostages for burial, what are the signs of life and renewal that we are starting to see, even after this long and painful period? What are the signs of life that we are creating? This week I saw one. I was scrolling on Facebook and I saw a post by the National Library of Israel. The post was about a couple, Sharon and Doron Segev, and their 3 young children who survived October 7th after spending long hours sealed inside their safe room in Kibbutz Be'eri. They had no air, no food, and no water. Hamas terrorists set fire to their home, and the family began to suffocate. But miraculously, the explosion that the terrorists caused to try to break open the window actually just created a small crack in the room through which the family could take turns breathing. That tiny crack saved their lives. When I read that, I could not help but think of the Tsohar that God commands Noach to make in the Teva. The rabbis say that this Tsohar was either a skylight, a window, to let a little bit of light in, or perhaps it was a precious stone or jewel that somehow allowed light to glow from within the ark. Either way, its purpose is the same: to let light in when the world outside was filled with darkness and chaos and uncertainty. For the Segev family, that tiny crack in the window became their Tsohar, a narrow opening that allowed them to survive, to breathe. In the months that followed October 7th, 5 women founded an initiative called the Comfort Object. We have to note here that the word for comfort, yinachem, is compared often by the rabbis to Noach's name, rest. The goal of these women was to give life to items rescued from the destroyed homes of the Gaza envelope. The Segev family was the first family that this group of women worked with. When they entered what was left of their home, in the middle of the burned living room, sifting through the rubble, they found an old IKEA bench, half burned and warped. And so one of the artists, Maya, painted the blackened areas. She sealed the burned sections with clear epoxy. The bench became a physical record of 3 moments in time. A third of the bench, life before October 7th, unharmed, untouched. The middle of the bench, the darkness of that day. And the latter third of the bench, the present, an effort to rebuild. When Maya finished the project, she broke down in tears. The bench, perhaps like Noah's teva, wasn't just furniture. It was a story about survival, about rebuilding from what remains, about creating something whole again, even if it will never look the same. That, to me, is an example of the olive branch, the rainbow of our current moment. Not perfect peace, certainly not the end of a struggle, but small, tangible signs of life, of people choosing to repair, to rebuild, to continue. But we can't forget this important fact, which is that the rainbow teaches us that though humanity will never be destroyed again, there will always be more rain. There will always be more floods. There will always be times of chaos, of loss, of uncertainty. But these floods won't wipe us out. Instead, they will strengthen us. They will test what we've built and remind us of what really matters. So right now, as these waters from October 7th begin to recede, our task is to keep building an ark, a teva, in public, for others to see. To make sure that our teva always has a tsohar, a crack that lets in light and air. To have faith and courage to collect the olive branches that we see from whatever dry ground there is. And to believe that even when the sky is gray, a rainbow will return again. Shabbat Shalom.